Hello dear students and welcome back to our online classes. I'm Ms. Rosa and today is our fifth lesson in numeracy. We are talking about fractions, so this is part 2 of our videos on fractions. Now, the learning objective is comparing fractions and adding up to 1. The vocabulary we need to know doesn't change. It's still numerator, denominator, and equivalent fractions because we are still on pages 84 to 85 in our lesson. Okay, before we start the new lesson, let's solve this question on page 84. Look at these shapes. One of the shapes matches all the descriptions below. Which one is it? First, part of the shape is shaded. Now, if we notice, 8 is not shaded. So we know 8 is not our answer, so we eliminate 8. The shape is not divided into fifths. Now, if we notice, 4 is divided into 5 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it doesn't match our description here, and we know it's not our answer. The shape is not a circle, so we know 5 and 7 are not our answers as well. The shape is divided into equal parts, so we need our shape to be divided into equal parts, so we know number 1 and number 6 is not the answer because they are not divided into equal parts. More than 1/3 of the shape is shaded. We need our shapes to be shaded in more than one part. But number 2, only one part is shaded, so it's not our answer as well. So we are left with number 3. Part of the shape is shaded, true. The shape is not a circle. The shape is not divided into 5 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's divided into 6 parts. The shape is divided into equal parts. We have equal parts. More than 1/3 of the shape is shaded. Yeah, so we have 1, 2, 3 parts of the shape is shaded, which is more than 1/3 of the shape. All right, now let's come to comparing fractions. Comparing fractions simply mean between two fractions, which one of them is bigger or smaller than each other, or whether they are equal to each other. We compare them. Now, for example, we have 3 out of 4 with 2 out of 4. Which one of them is bigger, or let's see if they are equal to each other. To make our process easier, let's imagine we have a rectangular and we cut it into 4 parts because we have 4 as the denominator here. Now, for 3 out of 4, we shade 3 parts, and 2 out of 4, we shade 2 parts. Yeah? Which one of the shaded parts takes bigger space? We see 3 out of 4 here is bigger because it takes more space. So 3 out of 4 is bigger than 2 out of 4. But it's not always that simple. For example, we see in this case between 3 out of 5 and 4 out of 8, the denominator is different, so we have no way in telling which one is bigger. In this case, we must create an equivalent fraction for each of them. Now, we must create an equivalent fraction for 3 out of 5 and also 4 out of 8. But how? We need to find out the common denominator. In other words, we need to find out an equivalent fraction for 3 out of 5 and also for 4 out of 8 that has the same denominator. Yeah? And in order to find out the same denominator, we need to write the multiples of each numbers. Let's start with 5. 5 times 1 equals 5. 5 times 2 equals 10. 5 times 3 equals 15. 5 times 4 equals 20. 5 times 5 equals 25, 5 times 6 equals 30, 5 times 7 equals 35, and 5 times 8 equals 40. 5 times 8. Now let's move on to 8. 8 times 1 equals 8, 8 times 2 equals 16, 8 times 3 equals 24, 8 times 4 equals 32, and 8 times 5 equals 40. So here we have 40 and 40 for both of them. 40 is common, so the common denominator in our next equivalent fraction is 40. Now we should ask ourselves, how did we end up with 40? How did we move from 5 to 40? We moved from 5 to 40 by multiplying 5 with 8. And whatever we are doing to the bottom, we are doing to the top. So we should multiply 3 with 8 and then we get 24. Again, we should ask ourselves, how did we end up from 8 to 40? By multiplying it to 5. 8 times 5 equals 40. And again, whatever we are doing to the bottom, we should do to the top. So 4 times 5 equals 20. Now, between 24 out of 40 and 20 out of 40, which one of them is bigger? 24 is bigger than 20, so 24 out of 40 is bigger than 20 out of 40. Because 24 equals to 3 out of 5 and 20 is exactly the same as 4 out of 8, so we know that 3 out of 5 is bigger than 4 out of 8. To practice this more, let's go to question number 5 in our books on page 85. Let's solve these questions. In A, we need to compare 3 out of 4 with 7 out of 20. Now we find the equivalent fraction for each of them and they should have the same denominator. Yeah, we need to find out the common denominator. And in order to do that, we should write the multiples of both 4 and 20. Yeah, we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and 24, and also the multiples of 20. We already have a common denominator, which is 20. Twenty times 1 is 20, and 17 times 1 is still 17. Also, how did we end up from 4 to 20? We multiplied it with 5. So 5 times 4 is 20 and 5 times 3 is 15. Now we have the common denominator. Let's compare them. Okay, so 70 out of 20 is bigger. And because they are exactly the same as 3 out of 4 and 17 out of 20, we know that 3 out of 4 is smaller than 70 out of 20. Okay, question B. We are comparing between 7 out of 9 and 28 out of 38. Again, we are finding the equivalent fraction for each one of them by finding the common denominator. Okay. We start with multiplications of 9. We have 9, 18. 9 times 3 equals 27. 9 times 4 equals 36. If you notice, we already have a common denominator. 36 times 1 is 36, so we have 36 both ways, and we found out our common denominator. Now, how did we end up with 36? Because 36 times 1 equals 36, and 28 times 1 is 28. And how did we end up with 36 here? Because we multiplied 9 with 4. 9 times 4 equals 36, and 7 times 4 equals 28. Now you notice we got the same fraction. 28 out of 36, and they are equal to each other. Now we know 7 out of 9 is equal to 28 out of 36, and they are equivalent. Okay, the last question, C. We are comparing 1 out of 4 and 1 out of 3. Again, we should find the common denominator by writing the multiples of both 3 and 4. Right, so our common denominator is 12. How did we end up with 12? Because 3 times 4 and equals 12, and 4 times 3 equals 12. Whatever we are doing to the bottom, we are doing to the top. Now we ended up with 3 out of 12 and 4 out of 12. And 4 out of 12 is bigger, so we know that 1 out of 3 is bigger than 1 out of 4. All right, now let's look at this question on page 85. The question asks us to copy the spider diagram shown below. We have this spider diagram. Complete it so the opposite fraction adds up to 1. But what do we mean when we say add up to 1? If you remember in the previous lesson, we talked about if we have a pizza and we cut it into parts. If we cut it into 2 parts and we put both parts together, then we have 2 out of 2, and it equals to 1 whole part, as we can see in the picture. Similarly, if we cut it into 3 parts and we put all the parts together, it means we have 3 out of 3, and it equals to 1 whole pizza again. Same goes to if we cut the pizza into 4 parts and we put all the parts together, it means 4 out of 4, and we have the whole pizza again. Again, for 5 out of 5, we cut the pizza into 5 parts and we put them together, then we got 1 whole pizza. This means that if we have a fraction and the numerator and the denominator were the same number, the fraction equals to 1. Let's look at this example. We have 1/2 or 1 out of 2. We should add a number to 1 out of 2 that equals to 1. Now we must know the denominator does not change at all. We do not change the denominator. So we put the fraction with the same denominator. We need to have the same number for both denominator and numerator. As we know, we cannot touch the denominator, so we have to again. We need to add a number to 1, so in order to have 2, and we have the same number in both numerator and denominator, and that number is 1. So if we added 1 out of 2 to 1 out of 2, we will have 2 out of 2, and that equals to 1. Let's look at another example. We have 1 out of 5 and we need to add it to a number that equals to 1. Okay, so again, we do not touch the denominator. Now, what do we add to 1 in order to have 5? We add 4. So 4 out of 5 plus 1 out of 5 equals to 5 out of 5. And 5 out of 5 always equals to 1. Now, if we go back to our example in the book on page 85, the spider web, it asks us to complete the opposite fraction, so it adds up to 1. Here, the book presents us with this. We need to have the same denominator, so 2 right here. What number, if we add it to 1, it equals 2? 1. So our fraction here is 1 out of 2. If we added 1 out of 2 to 1 out of 2, we will have 1. Now the next number is 3 out of 5. So again, we write the same denominator, 5. But we need a number, if we add it to 3, we get 5. So we have 5 out of 5, and it equals to 1. So if we add 3 out of 5 to 2 out of 5, we will get 5 out of 5 and it equals to 1. So if you notice, the addition only happens to the numerator and we do not touch the denominator at all. Let's look at 7 out of 10. Now, what number do we add to 7 in order to have 10 and then we can get 10 out of 10? It's 3. So if we add 7 out of 10 to 3 out of 10, we will get 10 out of 10 and it equals to 1. All right, 1 out of 4. Now, what number, if we add it to 1, we will get 4, and then we get 4 out of 4 is 3 out of 4. So 1 out of 4 plus 3 out of 4 equals 4 out of 4, and then we have 1. Let me see if you can pause and write the answers for this question number 6, in your books on page 85. I will give you the answer for the first one because we already did it. 1 out of 4 equals 2. 3 out of 4 equals 1. We do not touch the denominator. And if we added 1 to 3, we will get 4 out of 4, and 4 out of 4 means 1 because our numerator and denominator is the same. Now let me see if you can solve these two right here. I will upload it in an assignment for you. Okay guys, this is the end of our lesson today. I hope you understood the material well. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments and I will try my best to answer you as soon as I can. Thank you very much.